In a classic case of a slow-release podcast, I am talking before I've given my future speech. But by the time most people hear this, I will have given the speech. The speech is called A Toolkit for Increasing Irrelevance, and I'm giving it at the Hope Conference. I'm really going to look forward to it, but I thought it might be fun to capture a before and after situation of giving it. So what you're going to hear are my thoughts before I composed the speech, and maybe sometime later you'll hear what I thought about afterwards. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood, Daniel Boyd, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. In this contemporary era of how I do speeches, I'm not entirely avoiding giving them. I'm just finding less and less venues that are looking for my kind of organic, freewheeling speech. Luckily, Hope is always open for one of these, and I think some of my most personal and emotional speeches have ironically been given at this particular hacker conference. Since I started attending Hope, I'm finding it more and more freeing to talk about subjects that are very, very internal, subjects and matters that I wouldn't normally present from a podium, but which seem to feel right, talking about them at Hope. Such it is with the talk that I'm preparing to give. What's really great about Hope is that they don't require me to produce an outline or a presentation abstract for what I'm going to talk about. They trust in me that whatever presentation I give will be meaningful, will be solid, and will generally have positive reviews. I often think about this one talk I gave at a more technical conference in Boston, where I had the unusual experience of getting feedback, actual app-based feedback for attendees, and it was split down the middle. People either thought it was the best speech that they attended at the entire conference, or they were convinced it was the absolute worst. In my particular outlook when it comes to presentations, I would much rather have people have any emotional reaction, positive or negative, than just consider themselves to have watched a 45-minute screensaver. So this works for me. If people look forward to my speeches because they've seen other ones and I do more of the same, or at least more thematically the same, I think they'll have a great time. And people who are expecting some sort of technical overlay about what they're going to do with this particular process, perhaps in archiving or digitizing, they're not going to have a good time. So what's this talk about? Well, here it is just a few weeks before. I've not written a word. What I do know is that it is going to cover, partially, the lives of Ed Piskor and Cheshire Catalyst, two people who were very special with regards to Hope and the Off the Hook radio show. Ed Piskor was a cartoonist who created WYSIWYG, a comic book about hackers and the hacker outlook, which he constructed by listening to hundreds of shows of Off the Hook, hosted by Emmanuel Goldstein, and Cheshire Catalyst, a hacker, editor, space enthusiast who attended many Hopes and who passed away last year. I know that talking about people being gone can be very unpleasant for some, but I have a very strong belief that if we don't give testimonies to what people were like before us and leave just a paragraph of who they were, we're not doing service to the efforts that they provided us and to which benefits we enjoy frequently. Ed Piskor was not just a cartoonist, but a comics and culture historian, and had a work ethic that I experienced over the course of about 15 years that was breathtaking in how intense and dependable it was. Cheshire Catalyst found himself at the center of a number of major events and played his part in all of them. And I have records of what he was talking about at different times in his life. And from those two, I believe that I have two case studies about what legacies are. As time is going on, the hacker archetype is ossifying, and people who were part of its 1950s and 60s and 70s eras are disappearing. And I believe that a 45 to 50-minute talk can talk about not just who they were, but the lessons we learn about what we leave behind. After all, I'm in the business of going through the leavings, the legacies of people who are gone. I'm ripping thousands of DVDs from one person, thousands of VHS tapes from another, and these are people who are gone, and this represents part of their legacy. So I feel empowered to talk about the lessons that I'm learning as I walk through these piles of left media. When I do finally sit down, soon, to work on this talk for Hope, I construct a very basic outline, a set of acts, something where the first part covers this, the second part covers that. I try not to nail myself down too hard. I produce slides that are not to be read from, that are not to be text versions of what I am saying, but illustrative of what I am describing. The drawings that Ed Piskor did, the images of Cheshire Catalyst, the process of looking through other legacies and what's left behind. The difference between living and gone is, after all, the fulcrum, the energy point of what I'm discussing. From here, I expect some extemporaneous discussion. I expect me to go into tangents that come to my mind just beforehand. I, of course, react to the audience, and if I think I'm going in a direction that makes them incredibly uncomfortable, but not in a way that provides learning and meaning, I'll shift gears. I'm very lucky. I have the ability to do this. Not everybody does. A not insignificant number of people have to construct a word-by-word script for themselves, or they feel they will be doing injustice to the intended subject. And I respect that. That is working within your strengths and your purpose. My strengths are that I'm a storyteller, that I'm able to weave together a basket, a tapestry of different ideas and find themes in them. I'm able to show images of work that I've done or work that needs to be done and let it illustrate where I'm going with my topics. I'm comfortable thinking of what I'm doing as being instructions. So I've used the word toolkit this time, a series of thoughts in working into projects of your own legacy or the legacy of people you've become the guardian for. Through this path, I hope that my talk will give people a moment of pause, and more importantly, people will be able to point to it. They'll be able to demonstrate to each other what they mean when they talk about legacy and what's left behind. Naturally, it's not really just about legacy. It's about living your life in a way that you know legacy is coming, but also leaving behind a story requires living that story. So it's not just a toolkit about dealing with old media and memories and memoirs, but about living a life worth telling a story about. That's my generalized idea about this presentation. The idea that I will be giving people tools not just for what to do in a tragedy, but to live a life that's a celebration. If this all sounds weird for a hacker conference, I believe very strongly that these hacker conferences are one of the remaining fields of open-ended discussion, of open-ended ideas being presented. In older times, you would have people talking about nootropics and lifestyles and different philosophies, along with how to use these particular knobs or wire this piece into that. I think the philosophies and the outlook and the life lessons live beyond the individual tinkering toys that people do. That is the foundation of this talk. Am I worried because it's so close to the deadline? Not really. I have put myself through some pretty intense situations. I have given talks where I didn't know I was going to be speaking. I've given talks where the subject is changed out from under me, or where, just due to circumstances, I didn't have any slides. I was just going to talk to this crowd. So I've been there. And I'll tell you, if you ever find yourself in this situation and you have something you believe strongly in, you can do it too. You can provide your audience, whether they're a surprise or a planned set of attendees, with something valuable. I do think presentations can waste your time, that they can be aimless and lost and inefficient, but they can also be transcendent. They can take you to a different place. And if done right, where right simply means competently and with a true, honest spirit, people who are sitting in the room for a presentation can be transported to a different level of being alive. So let's hope this particular talk makes people feel, if not a new level of existence, like they were informed and given something new to walk out of that auditorium with. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, thanks to James Bekoyanu, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Symbionts, Benjamin Guts, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. It'll be interesting to see the difference between now and after I've given the speech. Words come out of me that surprise me as much as the audience. I love being on my toes, improvising in the space, responding to hecklers and technical issues, and everything else that comes when you put together so many moving parts. The Hope Conference moved to Queens from Manhattan some time ago. It's going to be difficult for them to work in this new space. It's distanced, it's a change, and of course, conferences are not quite attended like they used to be. But I'm really happy they're giving a shot, and it feels right, if for no other reason than my last memories of Cheshire Catalyst were talking to him at the Last Hope.